All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of the Masters of Fate podcast. I have a super exciting one here for you with Larry Antiporta.
What's up, crew?
He's a legend. So you're going to enjoy this. We're going to be talking peak performance, productivity, and being a sales legend. It's just so good with influence and persuasion. I was like, what is that word? Persuasion. And yeah, we're going to go deep today on those subjects. And Larry, thanks so much for being here, dude.
Dude, it is an absolute pleasure. So thank you for having me here.
Love it. So to give you guys some context, Larry is our sales director at Masters of Fate. He was also a brother in the Masters of Fate Brotherhood before he joined the team. And it was pretty cool how you started in the Masters of Fate Brotherhood, where your first official question in the group was, should I take what's the word for it?
Sabbatical.
That's it. And then I was like, yeah, do it. I took a sabbatical after selling my last company and it was fucking awesome. So I would love to dive into that experience. What were the lessons? What did you learn from taking the time off? Where'd you travel? And all that.
Yeah. I think what might make most sense for everyone out there is actually giving context of like what actually led me to this idea of a sabbatical, because I don't know if, anyone else there is like 24, 25 years old thinking about having like a quarter life crisis and like needing to actually get like some peace in their life. That was the place I was at, y'all. And so I've been in this digital marketing space and high ticket sales for a little bit over 4.5 years now. And I was just finding myself early March, really on the cusp of burnout. And one of the things that I really realized was I was going through this cycle of burnout like a couple times, right? Like you would feel a little bit rejuvenated and then like go back to burnout, feel real rejuvenated, try something new, and then go back to burnout. And I was like, I need a long lasting like solution to this, not just a band-aid. And so I joined Masters of Fate. What was it, Andrew? Like late March, early April.
Yeah.
It seems so long ago, but like it wasn't even that long ago. And so one of the things that I actually joined was because I was like, man, I need to find peace in my life. And Andrew, kind of following him throughout the years and meeting each other in person, I know he was in that similar journey of like he just came out of finding peace. And so I was like, all right, let me ask this guy a couple questions and see if we can connect on this. And like he said, the first thing that I ever asked him was like, hey man, I've been thinking about taking the sabbatical. Should I do it? And what was funny was you literally said, yeah, just do it. Like so nonchalantly. I'm literally trying to think about how to like create my life moving forward. Like this is a big life decision. And Andrew just gives me like, yeah. And honestly, that's what I needed though. I just needed kind of like validation. And so what I decided was packed up my bags, sold everything I knew, like sold my car, left my house in San Diego, said goodbye to all my good friends and was like, all right, I'm going to go on 100-day sabbatical journey to discover myself, discover my mission, my purpose, and most importantly, my vision for what I need to do in my next season. And so through that 100 days, there was a lot of ups and downs, learning lessons, great highs, great lows. But the number one lesson that I extracted from that was how to actually have both peace and profits in my life. And when we talk about profits, Andrew, I don't know if I've ever defined this for you, but I don't just think of it as profits as in money, right? Because that's kind of the business term.
Mm-hmm.
I view profit as profiting from every experience that we have in life, meaning profiting from the failures, right? Profiting from amazing adventures, profiting from relationships in a way that, benefits both sides. And just being able to understand that with all this like upside, there needs to be another balance to that, which is peace in your life. And so the biggest journey that I had through this 100 days was I started to realize that, wow, you can be both in a state of abundance, prosperity, making money, making wealth, while also simultaneously really having inner peace. And so what in that 100 days, I had to go through a lot of chaos to come back to peace. And that was the most important thing, was I found myself, even during the lows, I was able to find a process that allowed me to keep coming back to peace. Even when I was kind of on a downward spiral, I just get right back up. And so that was my biggest lesson there. And when it comes to peak productivity and performance and all that stuff we're going to talk about in a little bit, that was the journey that I took to really find a process that now you know, in Q4, this is the same process that I'm using in sales, same process that I'm using in my life, relationships, that helps me get back in center. So yeah.
Dude, I love it. And you were the first one to mention peace and profits to me. And now that's in part of our messaging because that's what we're
Right.
doing. And then I added wealth and wisdom on top of that,
Right.
which having both sides of the equation, the balance, the middle way, the Tao, kind of what I'm into, but people have their own definitions of those things, like you just shared, which I love. But
Right.
if you guys have any questions along the way, if you're watching on Facebook Live, drop the questions down below, hit that heart button, hit that like button. The more engagement we get, the more people we can reach, more people we can help. And if you're watching or listening on the podcast, feel free to join us in the 7-Figure Entrepreneurship Facebook group. And that's what I want to go into next, is actually one thing that I wanted to mention is doing those immersive experiences, your 100 days of just like turning off and just following those little body nudges and getting out of the head and more into the body and following flow a little bit more. Those immersive experiences, just like me going to Deer Park Monastery in Escondido and studying with monks for a month.
Right.
We touch that feeling of peace. I'm sure you had so many moments of like, whoa, I'm in the moment. I'm tapped in. I know how I'm feeling. I know what I'm thinking. I know what I'm doing right now. I'm aware of everything around me. And when we immerse ourselves into those experiences, we can get back there so much quicker. So
Yes.
taking those 100 days off, now in day-to-day moments, I'm sure you're able to get back into presence and awareness so much better than you used to be when you were just grinding for 4 or 5 years.
That's exactly it. And it's funny because we talk about awareness all the time, right? Especially in our brotherhood, being aware, you know, this idea of loving awareness as well. And for me, I was finding awareness in like what peace is. Like I never really understood that, like what the hell peace was growing up. All I knew is like a bunch of old people wanted to find peace, and I'm like this young guy, like why do you want peace in your life, right? Like it was always such like a random thing to me, and then I didn't realize how important it really is for people's lives, at least for me, and it became one of my top values after that journey because
Mm,
it's like you said, it's when you become aware to peace, you start to realize how important it is. And then now I'm just actively, consistently on a regular basis, making sure I'm in that baseline of peace.
mm.
Right.
Yeah. And when we have peace within ourselves, at least in my experience, I am more aware of everything inside of myself and everything around me. And I was
Right.
thinking that for the longest time. Holy shit. I think I was pretty peaceful as a kid, but then going to college and just being so scattered, like feeling that I needed and had to do all of these things and getting super heady. I lost that feeling of peace and awareness and just contentment inside of myself. And I think most adults go through that. Like,
100%.
it's just like when we hit adulthood, we feel like we need to do all these things and we get super heady. And then when we're super heady, we're not aware of everything around us and everything inside of us.
And I want to touch on that one last point before we move on, because I think what you said was so key, man. Like this is a piece that I really was starting to understand, which is, you know, talking to so many business owners and talking to so many entrepreneurs and talking to so many adults going through tumultuous times. You'll talk to some of these guys and you'll realize, wow, you've been out of peace for like 5, 10, 15 years. And it almost becomes so normal that we forget that that was like an actually state of mind.
Mm,
Right. And for me, that's one of my biggest things is like moving forward. I'm so grateful and blessed that I figured this out at 25, because I would hate to get to that point where it's like I wake up when I'm 50 and that burnout just continued for another 25 years, you
mm.
know?
Dude, agreed. And like there's this old ancient wisdom that talks about this. Like we can think of the yin and the yang or the Tao and the middle way. And it's like as a society, we're so stuck in the head and the thinking and the masculine and not tapping into the creativity, the letting go.
Mm,
And the top performers kind of getting into peak performance are the best at moving between performing and then resting and taking time off and that sort of stuff. Like
Right.
just saw a video on Instagram yesterday. I was scrolling through, I think it was uh the dude that looks like my twin on Instagram. Forget his name.
Is it Vaughn? Something like
Yeah,
that?
boy or something.
Yeah, boy. That's what it
It
is.
was a video of LeBron James on the bench doing breath work, closing his eyes, counting in 4, counting out 4, and they have the tempo behind it.
Wow, he's
It's
doing
like,
box breathing.
yeah, and to be in the zone, to be aware of everything on the court, he needs to shut his mind off for a second, connect to his breath, because when you can control your breath, you can control your life, and that's what he was doing right there. And I'm sure it was a big moment in the game and all of that. But it's having both, being able to perform at the top level, but also being able to turn it off so we can recover and actually perform at our top level.
Wow. So good, man.
Yeah. And if anybody's we'll hop more into peak performance. I got Facebook Live up here. So if you guys are on here, say hey. Craig, good to see you. Dano, good to see you. Thanks for saying what's up. But a lot of these things that I was not doing in my early adulthood and my last business, and it's made such a massive fucking impact on my happiness, on my health, on my creativity, on my connection with myself, on my connection with other people. It's been insane. Just like these little tweaks and these little things in like ancient
Right.
that are actually showing us how to perform at the top level. No. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was just gonna say this idea of like when I'll save it for when we're talking about like energy performance because I think that ties well into it. But I 100% agree in that, and just the idea to be able to slow down and understand when it's time to slow down, and also times when to push. And I'll go a little bit into that a little bit because I think that's been one of the biggest keys to like why I've been able to have long-term sustainable success in high ticket sales, because there's a lot of churn in this space, especially with sales advisors, setters, all that stuff. The biggest thing that's been key for me is actually energy and energy rituals. So I love that.
Yeah, let's go into that. What are some of your energy rituals that you do on a daily basis to be at your peak performance?
Yeah. So for anyone out there who might be a business owner taking sales calls, or you are a sales pro, the number one most important thing that I found that's really helped me go from, a sales pro that might see success for 1 month or 2 months to just being able to have long-term sustainable success is dialing down your energy rituals and energy routines. Now, I think the best way to think about this, Andrew, is like from a big picture standpoint, and then actually going to like the tactics. So I think about my energy in like 4 stages. I actually got this from Naval Ravikant, and I started to apply this into my sales game. This freaking changed the game for me. So I invite you guys to really think about, if you're wearing the sales hat as an entrepreneur or you're a sales pro, think of yourself almost as an athlete. So I really love that you made that LeBron James analogy, because it really ties into this idea. I have 4 stages when I'm thinking about my sales game. The first stage is what I call practice. The second stage is what I call play. The third is what I call review. And the fourth is what I call rest. So just like an athlete, we are paid and based on our performance in sales, right? So I always want to be managing and thinking about my energy from being an athlete standpoint. In fact, when I was a kid, I was playing basketball, playing water polo. And one of the biggest mistakes that you can make in an athlete is overtraining, right? You don't want to be that athlete who's trying to go to practice 7 days a week, has 3 games that week, is not resting at all, and then he's showing up in the third game completely exhausted and he's riding the bench because he's too tired. That's what I think a lot of business owners and salespeople are doing, is they're actually coming from a place of good intention. I'm going to push and get that sale. I'm going to go hard for like 2-3 weeks. But then they get into this place of just accumulating burnout and fatigue and exhaustion. And then they get one big sales month. They hit that 20, 30, 50K, 100K, whatever it is. And then they go back to like 5K, 6K.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to invite you to question if maybe it's not even just marketing or outside forces. It's actually an internal lever that you're failing to really like optimize. And so does that make sense, Andrew, in terms of like that idea of like viewing sales and peak performance kind of as an athlete as opposed to like,
Dude,
trying to push?
100% it does. And for me, like I got my business up to 350K months. We were profiting like 50% tribe of buyers, but we were stuck there for like a year. I couldn't get past it.
Yeah.
It was because I had reached a new level. It was less about doing and more about thinking and creativity. And I didn't have the energy rituals in place to evolve to the next level, to think from a different perspective and paradigm.
Yes.
And it was just that grind, do more. But I actually switched levels where the next level was I get paid to think and delegate. Like that's it. Where I couldn't do that because I thought it was just about doing more. And that's what led me to burnout.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel if you think it might be helpful, I'd love to dive into each 4 stages and actually walk like people through the different rituals. But I want to make sure like,
dude, I would
ahead.
love that. I'm actually taking notes on this. So the 4 levels or stages were practice, play, review, and rest. And then how
Yes.
do you title those stages? Like what are those the 4 stages of?
Yeah. So here's how I think about it, right? In terms of like, let's talk about the first stage. Let's talk about practice, right? Allen Iverson was infamously quoted, practice, who needs practice, right? Like I always think about that and I do the opposite of that because practice was literally the thing that got me to be successful in sports. And it's the same thing that I realized was what helped me get successful in sales. When I was on different sales teams, I was selling in tech sales before I entered the high ticket coaching space. I was always the guy that was like willing to test out new things, right? And so when you think of the stage 1 practice, the way that I invite you to think about it, this is your testing phase, right? You should always be identifying first, like what is my weakest part of my game that I need to improve? So when it comes to sales, it's like maybe you need to work on, let's say, handling objections or going deeper in discovery or understanding how to give your pitch in a much more concise and precise way, right? I believe the biggest mistake that people have is they're just going into their next sales call and sales week, not actually understanding what they need to work on, like the actual part of their sales process. And so for anyone out there who wants to improve their closing rate, the fastest way that I improved my closing rate was like, all right, this week I'm focusing on this part of my sales game, right? And I'm going to study different training specifically on that. Like we talk about this in Masters of Fate, Andrew, talking about like acquiring skill sets. Like it's a very similar process that I discovered, which is obviously in alignment there. But I would compartmentalize, all right, this week I'm going to focus on handling objections. I'm going to watch this specific video, this specific course on just focusing on handling objections. I'm not going to focus on the pitch. I'm not going to focus on discovery. It's just this week. So that's stage 1. Then from there, I move on to stage 2, which is play, or I like to put in parentheses, perform. The problem that a lot of people will make is they'll focus and study all these different things, but they don't actually have the confidence or courage to actually test them out in real time during the game. So they're not actually implementing. So in order to actually get yourself to a huge learning curve and like actually solidifying this stuff, you actually have to be like, okay, cool. On this next sales call, I've been working on handling objection and concerns. I'm actually going to say the thing in terms of the let me think about it concern and how to overcome that. I'm actually going to say this on this call. Whether or not it works or whatnot doesn't matter. I'm just going to go out there and shoot my shot, right? Because you don't want to be the guy on the team who's, playing basketball, the ball's coming to you and you just pass it because you were too afraid to take the shot, right?
You got to have those data points.
Yeah, you got to collect the data points.
Exactly. Just testing it out.
Right.
That's how I think about it. But I love this. Keep going.
Right. Because think about it like this. It's almost like do you mind if I share my screen actually? I kind of want to draw this out. Is that possible?
I-
I'm a visual guy, but
We're
it's
on a
okay.
podcast, but we can share after. We'll share
Cool.
towards then.
So I'll draw it out visually for anyone watching. So it's like almost a positive flywheel effect, right? Because you have your first stage practice, it feeds into play, and you actually have to implement it. But the third phase from there is actually understanding, okay, cool. Now that I've actually implemented the things, the third stage is actually review. Because I would say 50% of the learning is actually implementing, but 50% is the other 50% is actually when you're reviewing, when things slow down. And most importantly, you actually can step outside of yourself and ask yourself the right questions. Hey, did I ask the question in the right way? Did I deliver that in the right way? Did I do it in the right timing? And so review is so important. And some examples of this is like an energy ritual that I do. I'll get a nice cup of tea, slow down, listen to my call review, and just play it and take notes. What did I do well? What could I have improved? And what's the thing that I'm not seeing right now? And I ask myself those three questions with any sort of call review that I do, because it doesn't need to be this crazy, like 1 hour or 1.5 hour session. Oftentimes it's just frequency, right? It's kind of like when you're an athlete, you watch game tape. Sales pros and business owners have that opportunity to watch that game tape as well. I just believe a lot of people don't watch it to the amount of frequency in terms of review to create that positive feedback loop for learning. So that's the third piece, right? You go in the gym, you practice your shot, you actually take the shot, you go ahead and actually review your game tape. And then last but not least, and I say this is the piece that a lot of people miss, is actually rest. Get to a point where you're actually not just shutting off the body, but shutting off the mind, right? That recovery and rejuvenation period is so important for athletes. That's where the muscle is growing. That's where the lessons are being solidified in your brain. You want to actually create buffer and margin in your calendar to just rest and rejuvenate, right? And so in your sales game and in peak productivity, that last phase is so important. And you really need to almost surrender and submit to that stage. It's honestly the hardest part for a lot of people who are type A. That was the piece that was hardest for me, was just learning how to like let my body rest and let the subconscious mind almost do the rest, right? Do the rest of the learning, do the rest of the solidification of what you're just practicing. And so when you tap into all those four things, right, you do the energy rituals of identifying what you need to improve on, right? Actually going out there and testing out what you were wanting to do, going out there and reviewing through game tape, call reviews, right? And then going out there and resting, taking some time to do, breath work, do some ice baths if you're crazy enough like me, or, meditation. These are the core four that really allow me to have long-term sustainable success in sales, but most importantly, continue to go through this evolution process and never stop like learning. So that's my 4 stages of learning. Hope that made sense to people and I didn't lose anyone there.
Dude,
I just wanted to break that down for y'all.
Four stages were practice, play, review, and rest. If you guys want to write those down. It's interesting because when you were talking about that, I was thinking about my own experience, my own journey. When I first got into entrepreneurship, I was practicing so much. Like this is crazy how much I'm learning. I was buying all the courses, I was watching all the YouTube videos, I was chugging down monsters. I was like, yeah, this is great. And then I got into play, and I had a pretty good balance between like marketing and delivering for clients and practicing and learning a little bit more. But the review wasn't really there. I wasn't reviewing how I could do better or be better in those skills. And then at some point in my last business, I lost that practice where it's just about doing. And I was joining coaching programs, I was joining masterminds, I was learning a little bit, but I wasn't giving that practice stage its full importance that it deserves. And I definitely wasn't resting. And my reviews weren't great. I did a little bit of intentions and reflections and that sort of stuff. Well, holy shit, I just going through those stages, like that's everything I'm doing now, which has taken it to a whole nother level with my morning intentions, evening reflections, doing the same thing for my weeks, my months, my quarters. And I love how you break it down by skill set as well. so that framework is so powerful. It's all about frameworks, not hard works.
Yeah, it's all about frameworks.
Yeah, it's
And what you said there was so key, Andrew, because that idea of like you went into a season of going super hard in practice and then you kind of stopped that. I've gone through that similar in my sales journey. And I noticed the moments where I stop practicing is the moments where you get kind of complacent and then your actual closing rate and how much inspiration, motivation you have actually goes down. And so I realized it's all four core parts are necessary to this. And those feelings of being stuck, every single time I can attribute to it to the fact that I've stopped one of those four things.
dude, 100%. Just keeping them in balance.
Right.
I love that. So we've talked a little bit about peak performance. We've already talked a little bit about sales. I want to talk a little bit about productivity. How do we become the most productive so we reach our goals faster, so we complete our projects, so we're the most happy and fulfilled, keep our word, all of that. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot, where we're talking about practice, and I feel like Allen Iverson right now, but that is where it all starts. We need to practice and know the frameworks that allow us to be the most productive. So like first jumping into sales, like what is your sales framework, Larry? When you're going through a sales call, what are the stages, like the macro?
Right.
Yeah.
So just so I'm understanding this fully, Andrew, like the actual sales call, like if you and I were having a sales call, what is the actual process that I would take you through to make sure that it becomes a successful enrollment?
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that I always like to preface this is a lot of people have a lot of different scripts and all these different like things they might have gone from Sam Ovens, from Traffic and Funnels to Jeremy Miner, Eli Wild. Scripts are an important tool. Now, I always say when I'm like coaching people in sales that, hey, if you have a script that works, keep doing it. The number one thing I want you to be focused on is, do you understand why you're asking that question? And are you actually getting the outcome that you need to get from that question in that phase in your script? And so I have a very interesting process that I take people through. A lot of it is mixed with Jeremy Miner's ENPQ as well as like Eli Wild's process. But the number one thing that I always keep in mind is regardless of the phases that I'll take people through a call, the most important thing is, am I actually getting the outcome that I wanted to receive from that question? And so that's why all these different guys like Grant Cardone and, Jeremy Miner, Jordan Belfort can get great results because they're still getting similar outcomes, even though the questions and framing might be different. So I'll share my phases and what I take people through in a second, but go ahead.
I love that you brought that up. Like it's super important to know what is the most important thing within executing that framework that you just brought up. And then to move somebody from where they're at on the sales call initially to a buyer's state, they've got to go through particular stages, and yours might be different, but like the opening, the pain and problem, the goals and outcomes, the commitment, and like when it comes to productivity, the first thing that we need to know in terms of getting the result and making that system of productivity the most efficient and effective is nailing down the frameworks and the stages that it goes through.
Right.
So what's your example of the sales framework that you use when you are how to be the most productive on sales calls? You take them through these stages for the goal and outcome to get them to a buyer state.
Yeah, great question. So I'll walk you through the different stages that I've learned through like Jeremy Miner and Eli Wild. And to define like productivity and efficiency in the sales context, my definition is, how can I get them from that state of like where they're at right now to actually being in an emotional buying state with the least sales resistance and friction as possible? Meaning like, if you talk to some of the people that I helped enroll in a Masters of Fate or other offers, people are like, dude, it felt so conversational. I didn't even know I was on a sales call. That's for me an efficient and productive call because I've gotten to that point where it's an emotional buying state without actually triggering sales resistance.
That's
so
how it should be.
yeah, that's how it really should be. I mean, that's how I always converse with people. It's a human interaction. It's conversational. So my first stage is what I call the connecting phase, right? And it's really just, I mean, it's pretty simple to connect with someone, right? The outcome that I want from a connecting phase in a sales call is really just to get people comfortable and like lower down their sales resistance. So what's really interesting is a lot of like the old school and old way of like teeing up sales calls is these like long ass agendas that people say that's like 2 or 3 minutes, right? And I don't think there's anything wrong with setting an agenda on a call. I just believe that the outcome you want is if you're going to do that, it needs to come across in a way that's conversational, human, and actually leads to connection as opposed to leads to friction. Because someone can do the whole agenda and then get to a point where they don't like want to talk after because they understand, oh, this is a sales call. I'm just going to go through the process again. And so I wanted to fuse that before the beginning of the call. And so my process is stage one is connecting. Stage two is the situational. Stage three is the problem awareness. Then I go into solution awareness. Then I go into cost of inaction. Then I transition into the pitch. And then the seventh and last stage is the commitment. And so with all those different stages, what I'm doing is I'm creating urgency. I'm creating the gap, as a lot of people know it in sales, understanding their situation, where they want to be, and then understanding like what's the cost if they don't do anything about this. And then if there's alignment and a fit with what we have to offer at Masters of Fate or any other offer that I've done, then I actually transition to the pitch, go into the overview, keep it pretty high level, big picture, and then I ask for a commitment. And so in that 7-stage process, what I'm really doing is I'm almost taking people through this emotional roller coaster, I like to say. A lot of good, a lot of bad. There's some times where there's just a little lull, and then we're going through this emotional roller coaster together, most importantly. And I think the biggest mistake that people have is they're either too much on the positive and the high, and there's not enough like negative emotion or negative, awareness of pain. Or sometimes it's just all pain and the people just don't feel good and there's no like actual vision involved. And so you have to really take people through both the highs and the lows, the heaven and the hell, so they have an understanding of like, okay, this is what I'm actually trying to accomplish with this solution. So that's the ultimate outcome that I always tried to create in every single sales call. And most importantly, really, like I was saying, doing this together with them. It's not this combative, like I'm trying to do and manipulate against you. It's really just holding space for this person and holding their hand almost as we're going through this roller coaster together.
I love that. And we're talking about productivity. Like you learned a sales framework and it's changed over time. So being the most productive on sales calls, you learn about the framework, and then you look at the elements that go into each stage or each one of those points. So questions that you ask in the connection stage, how you should be listening in the connection stage, what your tonality should be in the connection stage, compared to your tonality might be different in the pain problem stage, empathize, that sort of stuff. So looking at the elements, and I'm trying to share this framework of productivity so you can move it across different ways to be productive. So I kind of want to switch to another example, which would be just overall, how do we become the most productive just human beings in general? So a few notes on that is first knowing where we want to go. What is our life vision of who do we want to become? And then working backwards from there. So like in sales, the end result is getting that person into a buyer state and giving them an offer if they're a good fit. Being the most productive in our lives starts with creating the outcome that we desire of where do I want to end up, right? And then we can chunk back from there of what do I need to get done this year? What do I need to get done this quarter? What do I need to get done this month? What do I need to get done this week? What do I need to get done today to get to my life vision, right? And it takes some work, but this is what 99.9% of people are not doing. They're not optimizing for the end result in their lives.
That's right.
And then looking at, we have our values, our beliefs, our energy rituals, like that is optimizing our thoughts, our feelings, and our actions towards the results that we ultimately want in life. When we identify our core beliefs, the I am statements, I am the way, I am the path, I am master of my fate, I'm captain of my soul. When we identify our core I am statements, we have an anchor to go back to. When, like, today I was meditating, I was going down a path of like just some negative thoughts, and then I'm like, no, I'm master of my fate, I'm captain of my soul, I can do that. Just having those thought anchors are so powerful. And then our values of what actually light us up in life: energy, wealth, service, spirituality, innovation. Then we know what we actually want, what will actually light us up. And I've created so many visions before I had my core values, and my visions didn't align with what I actually wanted. So having those core values are so essential. But then we look at time design. Where is our time going? How many hours do I want in the day for work? How many hours in the day do I want for connecting with my family, connecting with friends? How many hours in the day do I want to focus on my energy and elevating that? Then I live by my calendar now, and it's color coded by these things are for work, these things are for relationships, these things are for my energy. So I'm living a well-rounded life. And setting up the goals on a quarterly basis and a monthly basis, the projects on a quarterly basis and monthly basis, and defining what we're actually going to get done, then outlining the tasks of what needs to get done. And then I have a 2-hour block every day for deep work. Then I just plug in those tasks that are for my core projects. And then that has made me so fucking productive, where I know between 8 and 10, that's where I have the most energy and focus. So that's when I do my deep work, no distractions, and I get the #1 thing done for the business.
Right.
More people just did that. And then knowing, like, this is crucial, knowing that we only have about 90 minutes of focus that we can do.
Focus. Yeah.
And then what I've been doing for the past year is working for about 90 minutes and then meditating and doing breath work. And then I know I hit at like doing that. And then at like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I hit an energy dip. I started putting my workouts in there at 1 o'clock. And then my energy is great throughout the day. And just knowing our natural energy rhythms and putting the right things in at the right time. That's how we become the most productive, like really designing time for what we want.
Right. And it's what you said was so key, man, which is this idea of like, you actually have to have clarity and awareness of your own energy rhythms, because that's the biggest thing that I think is a misconception with the whole, like, you know, you got to wake up at like 4:30, 5 a.m. club. It's like, dude, that works for like Nick and like some people. Like, there's some people that just like fucking love that shit. For me, one of the things I noticed is my peak productivity is between the hours of 10 to 2. So I actually tried for about 90 days to wake up at 5 a.m. a year ago. And I was the most unproductive person I've ever been, because I was taking sales calls. And by the time I got to my first sales call at 10, I was already 5 hours like doing stuff, and I was like tired. And I was like, I'm not showing up for these people. Like, why is that? And then I realized, well, I'm waking up at 5. If maybe I was a creative and like writing copy and doing that type of stuff, it would have been a little different. But I was taking sales calls. So I say that for a reason, for anyone out there who is trying to find their own productivity. step one is finding out like what your own rhythm is, right? What your own energy is like, and being okay to kind of say no to some of the more like mainstream productivity advice. Take it with a grain of salt, test it out, and see what really works well with you, because it might be different for him compared to like, what you're trying to test out, right?
Dude, 100%. There are these things where it's just like fact that we can only focus for about 90 minutes.
Exactly.
So like there are these natural rhythms that we have as human beings, but there are also natural rhythms that people have as individuals. Like I love to wake up at 5 now. And I
Right.
naturally wake up at 5 now. And it changes because I wasn't always that way. I was the dude that slept in until 10 or 11.
Right.
So these rhythms can change too. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. The other element that I wanted to get into was capture and organize system for productivity. Like our brains are so good at coming up with ideas, but it's so fucking bad at keeping them. So my initial capture was just my notes on my phone, and I had different categories. So I had my mindset, my values, my vision, my tasks, so on and so forth. Create different categories, and I would pop in, put it there. So that was my capture, and I never had an organized system until I started using Airtable, which basically all our technology is based on Airtable now, and that's our organized system.
Right.
And now I have a voice note where I could probably share it with everybody here. I'll do the same thing. Hey Siri, wait 1 second. Let me do this. Hey Siri, make quick task. Tell Larry his hair is looking great today. So then just by voice note, it was added to my Airtable. I can show that off here. To-dos. So there's the capture element here, boom. And I did this
And you told me my hair is just so sexy and gray today.
Boom. So this is our capture system. And then we can organize it into what we want to get done today, what's in progress, when we want to get that thing done. So when it comes to productivity, we come up with so many good ideas. How many times have you listening come up with a good idea and then it just kind of, you forgot about it later?
And it fades.
Yeah, more times than we realize. And if we just have a capture system to capture those ideas, and then an organization system to put them where they should be, so we can reflect and review them, it's fucking game over.
And I think one of the things that I love about that though, Andrew, is the speed to capture, right? Because I mean, how many of y'all like wake up in the morning, you had like an amazing dream, but then literally 5 minutes after you like made your coffee and brush your teeth, like it's already gone. Like, oh, I totally forgot my dream. Like our ability to actually capture it straight into the speed is really important. Like one of the things that I do for review, Andrew, in terms of like productivity to like really solidify and capture is I literally leave a voice note after a good call or a bad call. And what I'll do is I don't need to sit down and like type up for like 20, 25 minutes because the speed of that is like too long. I don't always have that time in between calls, but I always have 3 to 5 minutes between calls. And I can leave a quick voice note and then just go back to it through like Otter AI and then type up the key things that I have. So for me, that's what works really well is like leaving voice notes for myself so that I can like get straight into like the capture mode as soon as I hop off a call.
You know, we can automate that. Like,
of course we can. Knowing you, we can.
If you guys aren't using Otter.ai, it's the best fucking system because it transcribes every word in real time. It's like magic. Otter.ai, you can look it up on the App Store. But you can actually take that voice note and through shortcuts, drop it in Airtable with the sales call that it would be next to. And you can automate that through Zoom if the calls are on Zoom. Automatically drop in Airtable, and then when you take the voice note, it can automatically connect to that Zoom. So that'd be cool.
Dude, I love how your mind works, bro. Like I was like, holy shit. Like
I'm just constantly thinking, how can we reduce friction?
yeah, that's fucking awesome, dude. Like holy shit.
Like if I was hanging out with Nina yesterday and we were watching the show 1899 on Netflix. It's fucking incredible.
Oh, it's that new show. I saw that.
Dude,
I haven't seen it though.
the last 4 episodes last night. Mind blowing. I love it. But we were watching it on her computer and her tabs were all these random fucking tabs that or sorry, her bookmarks on her Chrome bar extension just annoyed the shit out of me. Because it wasn't optimized. Like I have everything in folders on my Chrome bar.
Right.
And then when I need anything, like I need to delegate a task or I need to go to a specific folder or a specific dashboard, I'm one click away. Like
right.
I realized when I was working with Spencer on productivity was that holy shit, I'm wasting so much of my time and so much of my energy over and over and over because I'm typing in the same thing every time. And like, if I just mitigate that and move that there, how much more productive I will be and how much better I will feel and have less frustration.
Right.
Yeah, it's just.
And it's crazy because of the law of compounded effect, right? Like, for example, if you, even though it's only maybe a second or a second and a half more in that moment, imagine how many times you do that throughout the day, how many days there are, how many weeks, months, years. And you start to realize, wow, productivity really starts with the little things because it's in those small millimeter tweaks and optimizations that actually over the length of several years, that's the difference between someone who's like here 5 years from now and someone who's like here 5 years from now.
Dude, I love how good of a listener you are. And your vocal tonality, it's just
Thank you.
Might have been from those choir lessons.
Maybe it is.
Beautiful. I'm gonna check. If you guys have any questions, drop them down below. We will get them answered. I'm just checking right now. What's up, Chad? Good to see you.
What's up, Chad?
Chad. All right. I'm not seeing any questions right now. Is there anything that I should have asked you that I did not ask you?
I think this is just something that I'll end on and kind of share because we've been talking about energy, rituals, all this stuff. One of the biggest lessons that I learned when Eli Wild was coaching me was this idea that there's different levels of influence, right? There's, your influence and self-mastery to yourself. There's the ability to influence one-on-one, ability to influence others. And the number one thing that really moved the needle for me that I can like really think back to like what was the pivot point in my sales game where I went from like closing 20-25% to like 50-60, some months like 70%, was literally always improving my relationship and influence to myself, right? It was through optimizing my energy first that I was actually able to show up with my cup full for people, right? And my belief, and some people may have different beliefs than this, but when I take an enrollment call, this is a sacred space for people, right? Like I have the opportunity to have one meaningful conversation with this person that can change the trajectory of their life. And before, when I used to view sales as kind of just like this transactional thing, I didn't have that ability to actually influence others because I didn't really have that ability to influence myself. Like just being my word, having integrity, actually having the energy and going through the energy rituals. And the more I was able to influence myself and stay in integrity, that's when I was actually able to really double, triple, quadruple my closing rate and my ability to influence others. And so I want to leave that with anyone out there who might be struggling with sales or might see sales as kind of like this negative thing. My belief is when you really focusing on your ability to influence yourself, you hone in on your energy, you hone in on your focus, your productivity, everything takes care of itself, right? Because it's not so much for a lot of people, what is the thing that I need to say to this person and how do I convince them? They just got to shut up the voice in their head during a sales call and just be present. The reason why you're saying like, oh, man, I love how you're a great listener. That was not always the case for me. In fact, I would say that I was probably not the best listener growing up because I love talking, to be honest. I really do. But I realize in those moments that the more that I can shut off the voice inside my head and truly just be there for other people and just like hold space, every single word that I would leave for them would have more impact because it was coming from a place of like co-creation, right? As opposed to just me trying to do and enforce and control over other people. So that's the last piece of like sales philosophy I want to leave for people, just because that was one of the biggest belief shifts for me that really like helped elevate the game, not just in sales and revenue, but energy, focus, productivity as well.
I think you nailed it, dude. I don't think we could have ended it a better way. Great advice. And if you guys want to connect with Larry, I'll drop his Facebook link in the chat below or on the podcast notes. But guys, thank you so much for being here. Larry, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate
Thank you.
See you in like an hour or so. I'll see you in Slack.
Later, crew. Appreciate y'all listening in.